When I come to you on this podcast, I know that you labeled it as Khmer, but really I'm coming more to represent like that Chinese Cambodian community, which we call Gaki Nang, which it's a term that means our own people,
Hmm.
but it's really a term of endearment encapsulating this Chu or Chu Chow diaspora, and especially the ones that went into Cambodia. So now we have this like triforce of identity, which is like
Yeah.
Chinese, Cambodian, and American.
You're listening to the Speaking Tongues podcast. I'm your host, El Charisse. Each week, I sit down to a conversation with multilinguals where we discuss and celebrate language, life, and culture through our own perspectives. Welcome back to another episode of Speaking Tongues. I am your host, El Charisse, and today we're talking about Khmer with Ryan Samn, the creative writer behind the Instagram account All Things Cambodian. An Asian American writer and educator, Ryan began his teaching career as an English as a second language instructor in Fa'a, Tahiti, French Polynesia. Currently, Ryan is a college recruiter in the San Francisco Bay Area. He also works closely with students and is responsible for creating and organizing Southeast Asian student programming, focusing on the Cambodian, Khmer, Laotian, and Burmese student diaspora. Ryan is also a husband and father of two boys, a two-time published author, and actively volunteers at his family's local Buddhist temple on the weekends. I'm so happy to have you today with us. Ryan, how are you?
I'm good, El. Thank you very much. Jamrip Sua and Susday. So that's formal and informal greetings. But hi, how are you?
Fantastic. I've been waiting years to have this conversation. So I'm so happy that you're the one that we get to talk about Khmer with, and we get to talk about Cambodian culture with. And I couldn't be more pleased. So
It's an honor. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I like to start each episode with the same question, which is what is your first language and which languages have you learned to speak?
So this is gonna sound wild because I'm sure other episodes I've heard, and by the way, I love your podcast.
Thank
But
you.
other episodes I've heard, it's pretty straightforward. I'm from Tahiti, so my first language is Tahitian, for example. So I'm actually ethnically Chinese, and I actually don't speak, at least I don't speak very well. I don't speak any Chinese, actually.
Mhm.
So in our family, we have three distinct dialects of Chinese that our family speaks is Cantonese Chinese, and then there's Toisan, it's like a sub-dialect of Cantonese,
Mhm.
and then there's Teochew, which is eastern part of Guangdong or southern China. And so ironically, I can only like really say, Happy New Year, thank you, good morning, and all three. But what trips me out is my parents speak two different variations of Chinese. So they didn't actually teach my siblings and I any Chinese because of
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
And, growing up in the US in the 90s, because assimilation is such a huge factor in this kind of Asian American thought process of raising your kids in the US and wanting them to succeed. That's why you see like my first name's Ryan, right? I do have
Mhm.
a Chinese name, but actually it's not on paper, it's not used legally.
Okay.
So my first language was American English, and my parents really wanted me to speak well if one day I went into the workforce and that was something that people would look at. But I think that even just as a child, maybe they didn't want me to get made fun of for having an accent, anything like that. So today I actually speak French and Tahitian because, as you explained in the intro, I did work in Fa'a, Tahiti, French Polynesia. Indigenous name of that country is Ma'ohinui, but because
Ma'ohinui.
it's still dominated by France, still colonized by France, we call it French Polynesia in a legal sense. And so with my children, we speak French. My children know they're in trouble when my wife yells at them in Tahitian. So they also speak Tahitian, but I also understand and speak a little Tahitian.
Mhm.
And then I did go back as a young adult to learn the Khmer language. Khmer is the native language of Cambodia. So sometimes it's known as Cambodian, but us who speak the language, we know that it's called Piasa Khmer or Khmer.
Sakmai.
So
Okay.
I do speak Thai because we have family ties and family history going back to when Thailand was still called Siam.
Mm.
But I love watching Thai dramas. So because of that, I have just been able to pick it up. Interestingly enough, though, the Khmer language and Thai share a lot of root words. And so while they're not completely the same, if you speak Khmer, you can hear the words in Thai and pick up pretty quick on a lot of the vocabulary. And then
Mm.
just two extra little ones because, I spent time in my youth learning them, but I was a foreign exchange student to Japan.
Hmm.
Our city of South San Francisco has a sister city called Kishiwada. It's a suburb of Osaka. So
Hmm.
I was sent to classes prior to going, at least to learn how to read and write. So I can read and write katakana, hiragana, which are their alphabet systems.
Hmm.
Kanji, which is the Chinese characters, is very difficult, but I probably could be tested by flashcard and know the basics.
Yeah.
And then my wife always makes fun of me for this, but I always tell her I swear I speak Spanish, which
You sound like me.
I know. I mean, my Spanish, I think my Latin friends would laugh at that too because they know that my Spanish is not very good.
Hmm.
But I can order at a restaurant
Hmm.
and I can read and write, and it's come in handy living in California because especially working in education, such a huge population of our immigrants and also our ESOL students speak Spanish. So it's come
Yeah.
in handy to kind of know the basics and, you know, back then we didn't have Google Translate, as you know, and
Hmm.
we didn't all carry around phones, right? So
Yeah.
early 2000s, I had like a Razor or a Sidekick. You're not going to bust that thing open and pull out your translator. That just didn't exist before.
Right.
So being able to read and write Spanish, I took 3 years in high school,
Hmm.
and I feel pretty confident that I can, at least type or write. Mhm.
Yeah. I love that. And I was saying you're just like me because I also feel like I could I can speak Spanish. I can figure it out. And I'm humbled every day because
Oh yeah,
obviously I can't, right? But
right.
I'm learning, I'm trying, but I don't know, it's maybe the fabric of like having an education in the US. I
Yeah,
think most of us were exposed in some way having to take a Spanish class. So a bunch of us have that
absolutely.
false sense of confidence. Do you ever watch King of the Hill?
No, a
Peggy,
little bit, a little bit.
yeah, well, quickly, she's a substitute Spanish teacher, and her
Right.
Spanish is terrible, but her confidence is through the roof.
Yeah.
And there's this whole episode where they took a class trip to Mexico, and somehow they ended up kidnapping like a local girl because she misunderstood. And yeah,
I
um,
gotta go back and find that one now.
yeah, I'll find the episode so you don't have to you don't have to
My
drag through it,
goodness.
but it's pretty funny.
Okay.
Um so anyway, I love that linguistic mix that you have and how, I imagine it's allowed you to connect with so many different people and so many different communities, not only in your work but in your personal life and beyond. You said you went back to learning Khmer as an adult and
Mhm.
you made it a point to learn as an adult. So what was it that drew you back to the language, and what has that journey been like practically learning the language but also emotionally and being able to connect or reconnect?
Thank you so much for the question. You know, growing up, it's not that I was ashamed per se, but I just really focused on being, like every other kid in the class, being American. The thing about leaving the inner city or San Francisco at a young age, being brought to South San Francisco, which is a suburb of San Francisco. It's right in between city of San Francisco and the SFO airport.
Okay.
And so in this suburb, my parents kind of thought, I think their thought process was, this is a great place to live. We're out of the city. And while much of that is true, I do explain, my story pretty straightforward, which is, well, that suburb wasn't a white suburb. There's a lot of economic challenges. It's an industrial city. It's known as the industrial city, actually. That's the nickname. So it's being surrounded by a diverse population, people of color. Who I grew up around was Black kids, Latin kids. And when I say Latin, I mean they're Mexicano, Salvadorian, Nicaragüense. So a pretty good mix.
Hmm.
And then Polynesian children too. So Samoan, Tongan families live in the area.
Okay.
And so it's a pretty good mix, a lot of Filipino families,
Hmm.
and then a very small population at the time of Asian American families. My thing was that I did get along and I had friends of all these different cultures,
Yeah.
but I always got pointed out as the Asian kid, right?
Hmm.
So that kind of I don't want to be so dramatic as to say that I was always pointed out as the other, but I felt like the other.
Yeah.
Sometimes it would come up, right? I mean, you're a kid playing on the basketball court, the ching chong jokes come up. And so it doesn't feel good as a kid. And then you start
Right.
to like kind of detach yourself. And then getting bullied more in middle school, it was like the way they could come for me, right? So all that time, I really did not try to learn any other kind of language and wasn't interested in my culture. In high school, though, I started really figuring out about myself, who's my family. Whoever my family is who I am, right? So
Yeah.
really goes back to finding out about this family history.
Hmm.
I have an uncle who said that his grandpa, which is my great grandpa, my maternal grandmother's father, gave him a postcard with a black Buddha because that's where he planted his feet in. And so, really finding out from my grandmother that my grandmother's father and his father were the first in our family to step foot in Bat Bong, which is today located in northwestern Cambodia.
Hmm.
Bat Bong is this really interesting hub of culture, though, because at one point it belonged to the Khmer Empire. After it was taken over by Siam, which today we know as Thailand,
Hmm.
and then it was purchased or ceded to the French. And so there's all these different ethnic groups that have not only governed the land, but with that brought in whichever ethnic groups they thought were beneficial to bring in for business or what have you, right? Just like the history of every other place.
Hmm.
So during the time of French occupation, between the time of Siamese and French occupation, a lot of Southern Chinese went in for business. And so finding out that our family had ties to the teak wood business, in which these native teak trees would be cut down
Yeah.
and created into these almost like pirate treasure chests. And so why they would make these, they're called
Hmm.
muklung, is because back in the day, all Chinese families had arranged marriages. And
Mm.
so my family was no different. And so what they would do was when a girl has to go to her husband's house, she's only allowed that treasure chest full of things. Now
Okay.
she could fit whatever she wants in there, but it has to fit in there.
Right.
So you can't take three of those boxes. You can only take one.
How big is it?
It looks like, when you ever watch Pirates of the Caribbean and they got the treasure chest, it
Okay.
looks like one of those standard
Okay. Yeah.
chests, right? And
Right.
you could fit dresses, family photos, jewelry, but whatever you got is going with you, you got to fit it in that box.
Right.
And so because there's such a huge Southern Chinese population in Siam or Thailand and Cambodia, all the Chinese families are buying these boxes.
Hmm.
And so we found out that that black Buddha that my uncle was talking about was actually a massive statue of a deity called Da Tambang Krahong. And so Da Tambang Krahong, he's a local deity you have to pay respects to when you arrive. And I always knew about this family lore. It was like always in the back of my head. And I wondered like what languages they had to learn on this journey, right?
Mm. Right.
Did they have to learn French? Did they have to learn Siamese or Thai, right? Did they have to learn Khmer? And so coming down to it, for me, I've always had ties to the Cambodian community because of the temple and family ties and things like that. But other than the Cantonese Chinese and the Teochew Chinese, I was really drawn to Khmer or Cambodian because of that family history, right?
Hmm.
I actually asked my mom, where should I go to learn? What should I do? And she said, let's go to the temple. So she brought me to the temple, and I almost want to say I fell in love because I really saw it immediately as not just a religious center for Buddhism, but really caught on early that it was this important epicenter of culture for us in
Mm.
the diaspora, right?
Hmm.
And really, it's like this beehive. And one of the honey that is made there is the language. So I
Yeah.
was exposed to the language, not just the monks chanting in prayers,
Hmm.
but the families speaking to each other. And how do
Hmm.
we address each other respectfully? How do we address the monks? In 2012, I was invited to the San Francisco Khmer Temple, which is called Nagara Dhamma, and I was invited with other Cambodians to learn the Khmer language formally. And so this was actually a free class taught by Nikru Malay Uk. And so She is a Khmer language teacher. She's a community activist and just this wonderful human being I look up to so much for all her efforts. She did all this for free every
Wow.
Sunday.
Yeah.
I learned from her, her father, which we call him Ta, and another assistant teacher named Kaosar. And so these three really took the time to teach me how to speak, read, and write, which
Hmm.
is extremely hard
Okay.
because Khmer literally has the largest alphabet in the world.
Really?
So, yeah, you can look it up. Guinness Book of World Records, I believe it's something close to 74 consonants and vowels. I know there might be fact checkers listening. I heard that that number may be off. So some Khmer language experts were talking about there's some letters we don't use anymore and things like that. So could
Okay.
even be larger than that, if you can imagine. But emotionally, I felt fulfilled because this is the first time I was able to come in contact with something ancestral.
Mhm.
And spiritually, it felt like a big puzzle piece finally fit for me, you know?
Yeah.
Especially because I considered myself already a Theravada Buddhist, right?
Hmm.
So that's the Buddhism that stemmed from Sri Lanka, but came into Southeast Asia. And so not only was I learning Khmer, but a lot of Palay, which is the chanting, right? The ancient language that we use at the temple.
Hmm.
And then, like I mentioned, I was watching all these Thai shows, but I was also learning Thai because I was learning formal Khmer. I was making connections with the Thai. So my brain
Interesting.
as a
Right.
linguist is already working like that and making these kind of
Yeah.
connections, you know? But that moment that it really opened up for me was when I could read sentences. And I loved it because I really felt like reading them back to the class and the teacher, it was like a small victory. It's like a
Hmm.
very elementary level thing, but
Yeah.
I felt so much joy in that, you know?
Hmm.
And then from then on, I felt like this big new door open for the culture, open up for me in a sense that
Yeah.
I'm able to navigate learning Khmer, but not only the Khmer language, now I'm open to learning and reading about the culture, the history from the lens of, a Khmer writer was
Yeah.
writing it
Yeah.
and giving it to me who now can read it in Khmer. This is huge because everything else that you read about Cambodian English, always the same three topics. Angkor Wat, which is magnificent, but it's not the only thing, and
Hmm.
not the only temple that's magnificent. Khmer Rouge, which is the Cambodian genocide, and then the third one is pretty much always the same narrative of, oh yeah, they eat tarantulas, right? So it's not just a stereotype. It's true. There's insect markets,
Hmm.
but I found like if you Google, maybe 20 years ago, you Google Cambodia, you're gonna see those three things pop up, and not so much about folklore. Today, there's a lot more resources, right?
Yeah.
Um, but as an English speaker, really hard before to access that.
Hmm.
And so, like, due to these barriers of understanding and things available outside the Khmer language, I really felt cut off. But then now I felt reconnected, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course. I think that is so important that you brought that up about three things that people would see when they're Googling Cambodia, because there's a way that the narrative about a place, about a community, about a culture gets flattened.
Right.
When you're looking at it through a different lens, or you're looking at it through a different language, even. So having that ability to, I'm just reinforcing what you said because,
No, absolutely.
having that ability is so it's so magical to
Mhm.
understand that. And I'm happy that you had that opportunity and you've had that experience, because it's life changing. I can only imagine how life changing that those moments are, if they were for you.
Well, I got to put it to a test.
Okay.
So around that time, I was finishing up at Cambodian language school, and you're
Mhm.
never done, but it was
Yeah.
just like wrapping up the elementary book that we had.
Hmm.
I was also at the same time graduating from college with my BA in linguistics.
Hmm.
And so I went on to get my TESOL and TEFL certifications to teach English as second language or English as a foreign language. So I told my grandma, I want to go to Cambodia. And she said, oh, no, you don't. And I said, I do. I would love to go. And she said, okay, I'm going to bring you. We're going to
Hmm.
see together, right?
Okay.
So we went together and it was amazing because I was able to speak, as soon as we landed in the airport, I was able to speak to them and she was pretty impressed. We went back to Battambang to pay respects to that same Black Buddha.
Yeah.
You know, I shouldn't call him Black Buddha, but that's the nickname that we give
Mm-hmm.
him.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's Tatambang Karahong. And so yeah, we went back to see that site, and pretty cool seeing my grandma because she's the original, I feel like the OG linguist that I got all that from. Because she could speak all, like, she's amazing. My grandma can speak you know, her English absolutely. She speaks French. She picked up some Khmer when we were, you know, talking about things. She picks up all these different Chinese dialects as well.
Yeah.
So she speaks all these languages, and when I counted them up, my number of languages pretty much rivals hers, and I was pretty impressed.
Yeah, that's
So I did,
amazing.
thank you. I did put it to the test in Cambodia, and you know, I was told like, "Oh, you're using like really formal words, but we understand you." So
Yeah,
it's cool.
yeah. Was that, speaking of formality, that's what I was curious about. When you're in the temple and you're in a religious setting, and you talked about hearing the chanting and hearing the monks can chanting in Khmer. And then you were in the classes where you were learning the language and I guess how to communicate and talk to your peers. Did you notice that there's like a different like liturgical Khmer than there is
But there
religious?
is, yes.
Okay, okay,
So there's with the Khmer language, there's not only variations of it, but there's different levels based on respect. So there's a royal language.
okay,
For example, we would not say yes to the king as we. So for regular lay people, Khmer, to say yes as a male, I'd say bat.
but
For women, they say ja.
uh,
But then for the royals, from what I understand, and I've never spoken to an actual person in the royal family in
mhm.
person, but if I were to address them, I would never say bat. I would say kraptu. And
Kraptu.
so, yeah, this is the way they respond, right? So similarly, when you speak to monks, there's another language as well. There's another way to speak to them. I
Mhm.
would never also say bat. I would say kanya or
Kanya,
kana, right?
kana,
And so this comes from an Indian word karuna. And
karuna.
so, right, and so it's kind of like almost like yes or you know affirmative, right? And so when we say kana, it's men and women will say it this way. So what I understand is royal language, then there's the regular Khmer, and then there's a monk language to speak,
Okay, okay.
right? So yes, that is one part of it. The
Mhm.
other part is that with Khmer Buddhism,
Mhm.
there's another language being spoken in the temple, and the prayers and chanting are sometimes in this language, and it's called Palay. Now, Palay, it's spelled Pali.
Mhm.
Sometimes looks like Pali, right? But
Yeah.
Palay is how you'd say it, at least in Khmer. And this is an Indian language that does not have a writing system.
Mm.
And so, unlike Sanskrit, which has a writing system,
Mhm.
Ballet does not. So,
Okay.
when Ballet came from India into Sri Lanka, wherever ballet was, people would use their own script to be able to write ballet. And so
Okay.
this is how Buddhism was spread, was using the ballet language.
Huh.
Ballet is written with using the Khmer letters to spell out things. It's also used with the Burmese script or Mon script. You also have Lana script. You also have Thai script and Lao script. They can actually all write ballet language using their own, but it's no different than you and I using English letters if we're
Right.
spelling it out.
Right.
So I'll give you a sample of what a chant is in ballet. It sounds like this. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Now, when you chant that, it's paying homage to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha,
Mhm.
which is the triple gem. But when we chant in this way in ballet, you can chant it the way I just said it right now is in the Khmer version of that chant. But if you chant it in Thai, it's Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. So it's actually almost the same. There's
Mhm.
some vowel changes,
Yeah.
but those chants or that particular chant is not in the Khmer language,
I
if that makes
see.
sense. It's not
Yeah.
it's not a it's in the Balay language, Balay. Yeah.
Mhm. That's
So
so
this is
interesting.
this is
Yeah.
how Buddhism was spread to all these countries, right?
Yeah. I didn't know that. That's so cool. In your in your learning, in your teaching, have you encountered, I'm sure you have, but I want to know about how the Khmer language changes, maybe
Mhm.
from different parts of the country and people are maybe being influenced by different languages
Mhm.
or other, how are we observing dialectical changes or vocabulary changes in the language itself?
So I want to go back and bring us back to the Khmer Empire. The Khmer Empire spanned this large mass of mainland Southeast Asia, from pretty much present day Laos, most of Thailand, parts of present day Myanmar or Burma, um, all of southern Vietnam, and of
Mhm,
course, whatever Cambodia is today, the 25 provinces, 24 provinces, I believe.
mhm,
Um, all of that was the Khmer Empire. So Khmer was spoken as far north as where I mentioned, all the way down to where the Mekong Delta empties out into the South China Sea.
Let me open a map while you're talking.
Oh, absolutely. No worries. So if you look at a present day map of Southeast Asia, almost all
Mhm,
of that was Khmer Empire. Now,
mhm,
it's not to say that that was always all Khmer Empire, right? There's a lot of indigenous folks in there, the
mhm.
Khmu, the Hmong, the Mien. A lot of them traveled down from southern China into those lands. And we call, there's a formal name which is Thai, which is not Thai, but
Mhm.
Tai.
Okay.
And so there's different tribes of those people that came into Southeast Asia and also settled amongst the Khmer people.
Mhm.
But the Khmer language, because of wars and things like that, was the main language of the empire. So
Okay.
as a result of different wars that happened, though, right, and different
Mhm.
provinces that were either every time they fought a war, it's land is always the greatest, conquest of
Right.
what am I taking or what am I giving up, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so a lot of wars with Ayutthaya, which is the predecessor of Siam or Thailand,
Mhm.
and a lot of wars with Dai Viet, which is the Vietnamese empire that was starting to spread from southern China region all the way down the coast of where Vietnam is now.
Okay.
First, Dai Viet took Champa, which doesn't exist anymore. Champa was another empire that was next to the Khmer Empire. They're still Cham people. We actually have them. One of my best friends is Cham. So they still live in Vietnam and Cambodia. They
Uh-huh.
speak the Cham language, but they don't have a country anymore.
Oh, wow.
So when Southeast Asians talk about land grabs and all this stuff, it's very intense because I think it's something ingrained in Southeast Asian DNA to be very territorial and say, you're not taking my land because if that's all I have and that's tied to my identity, right?
Right.
So when it comes to the Khmer language, so in present day Cambodia, you have Central Khmer, which we call Khmer Kandal, right? So that's the very textbook Khmer that you'd learn if you opened up a YouTube channel and typed in how to speak Khmer. They'd
Mhm.
be teaching you only Khmer Kandal, which is the official Khmer language, again, taught from the capital city, Phnom Penh, in Cambodia, and then through the different 20 something provinces that are there.
Okay.
Now, you do, though, have a huge population, something over 3 million Khmer people living in Thailand.
Okay.
And so in eastern Thailand, there's a province called Isan, and then there's different provinces of Buriram, Sisaket, Surin. And so Khmer is still spoken as a variation of like mother tongue in those regions. And so we actually refer to that in the Khmer language as Northern Khmer or Khmer Surin. It's kind of inaccurate because Surin is just one province that was taken by Thailand, but
Mhm.
that's what we refer to it as,
Okay. Right.
I've heard it as Khmer Lu, but which means Upper Khmer, but
Mhm.
Khmer Lu now has connotations with some of the hill tribes, such as the Bunong, the Jarai, so they're kind of lumped into that area. So
Mhm.
Khmer Surin is spoken in present day Thailand, but again in that Isan region. And just to give you like some distinction between the two. Now, again, not an expert, but just from what I've understood, right? Like the word in Khmer, in Central Khmer, when we say farmer, we say sarai.
Sarai.
But in Khmer Surin, they say chow na,
Chow na. Oh,
right?
okay.
So you think about it, if you're listening to Khmer Surin, probably it's still mutually intelligible with Central Khmer speakers,
Mhm.
but enough of the vocab has changed over time, or even kept the same maybe from that region, that I'm thinking that um, I don't know if people would need to stop and ask each other, what does that mean? You know?
Right. Yeah.
So even within Central Khmer, Central Cambodian, that as a language and even as a dialect, if we're speaking in that way, there's
Hmm.
Krim Pisa, which I learned from one of my recent teachers, David. He's amazing. I'll talk about him more a little later, but Krim Pisa is like local dialects within the central language.
Hmm.
So kind of similar to, you and I understand that, like you have your New York way of speaking. So folks in the East Coast speak way different than folks in down south,
Right.
and then in California and versus Texas versus Hawaii. So even in the US, we have that. We have Kirimpisa, right? We have local dialects, right?
Hmm.
When you and I, as people having grown up in the US, hear those local dialects, if we hear it on the news, even we just hear a 40-second clip,
Right.
you and I could tell right away where they're from, right?
Right. Right.
So it's kind of similar. So other than Khmer Kandal, other than Khmer Surin, you also have Khmer Kram. So Khmer Kram is the dialect found in the Mekong Delta region
Hmm.
in present day southern Vietnam. So one of the things that's very well in the in the Khmer community, we know about this, but I don't know how much the folks outside of the Khmer community know about Kampuchea Kram. So Kampuchea Kram was a huge mass of land that the French gave to Vietnam. They ceded that land not even that far back, only in 1949. So only 76 years ago. So you still have groups of Khmer Kram people that go to the UN asking for human rights and asking for there to be more intervention from the United Nations. So there's different things that are going on. There's a lot of documentaries, there's a lot of websites that are talking about it, but it's just not as known. The dialect that's spoken there, Khmer Kram, is basically means Southern Cambodian. So today, if you listen to the language, that one is mutually intelligible with Khmer,
Hmm.
but it does have a distinct twang or like a tone to it
Uh-huh.
that probably is influenced by because Vietnamese is a tonal dialect. So you have
Right.
it's like how Chinese has tones, right?
Hmm.
Vietnamese works the same way. So an versus an mean two different things, right?
Right.
So when you hear Khmer Kram, they have like a twang to it, and it to me when they speak Khmer, it sounds like it. Well, they've been in contact, with the Vietnamese language so close in proximity. It only makes sense to me, right?
Hmm.
So when you paint this grand portrait, L, and you step back and look at how huge the Khmer diaspora truly is, even in mainland Southeast Asia alone, you could see the remnants of that Khmer Empire just by
Hmm.
its language,
Wow.
where it was left in Thailand,
Hmm.
where it was left in Vietnam, and then how it's spoken in Cambodia.
Yeah.
So in Cambodia too, there's also a lot of us in the diaspora noticing that if our families like myself are actually of Chinese origin or
Hmm.
ethnically Chinese,
Hmm.
we are figuring out that there's like another set of folks that speak Khmer, but it's not necessarily that it's proper or improper. But I notice with my friends that Khmer Chen or Chinese Cambodians will sometimes cut off the R. So, for example, the word for garbage in
Hmm.
Cambodian or Khmer is sumbram,
Sumbram.
but Khmer Chen or Chinese Cambodians will say sumbam. So they completely have, they don't pronounce the R.
Hmm.
And so I kind of thought about it like, is this like how, Chinese folks in the US who came
Hmm.
from China may have a slight accent with their English?
Yeah.
Or is it, but, I kind of mentioned that in some circles and they said, yes, but no, because now that way of speaking Khmer is now being influenced in the capital city of Phnom Penh because there's so many Chinese Cambodians that
Mm.
this has become like the normal way of speaking.
Interesting.
Right. And so I kind of thought about it as what is a normal way of speaking? And
Hmm.
then you think about it, yes, there's a standard American English,
Hmm.
but in whose eyes is that standard, you
Right.
know?
Right.
So really how I like to see it as a better world citizen is um, we have variations of these languages. Sometimes people get really focused on we shouldn't call it a dialect, it's its own language, or we shouldn't call it this, we should call it that. It's like, okay, just step back
Hmm.
and just like, we all have different ways of speaking.
Yeah.
So we can get technical about what's a language, what's a dialect, but we also have to like figure out like you said earlier in this podcast, that things are changing all the time.
Hmm.
And so when you look at it in that way, it's really not fair to label something as, well, that's what they do. You know, if all of a sudden all the Khmer people in Phnom Penh are also saying Sumbam,
Hmm.
then that means that language is changing. It's
Right.
shifting.
Right. And I think it's interesting from a standpoint of it being the capital, Phnom Penh,
Right,
because a lot of times we know around the world what is seen in the capital reaches so
right,
far. So
correct.
maybe that's even affecting the way that this Chinese language influence in this way of speaking now in the capital, if it's becoming like the popular way of speaking or the common way of speaking in this way, that's going to affect generations of
Right,
speakers of Khmer. So
correct.
that's another shift that's going to happen. That's so interesting.
Something very interesting that's happened, and I don't know how much people have spoken about it. I've seen it written, but I haven't heard anyone talk about it, which is that most of us here in the diaspora, our families came from Battambang,
Mm,
which is a northwestern province of Cambodia. And
mhm.
so, interestingly enough, we all were trying to figure out, well, why are so many of us from Battambang? But then I thought about it and I thought, well, let's just take it like this. California is not the main state of the United States. It's
Mhm.
not the capital, but it is one of the most populous.
Yeah.
So if there was an entire, Lord forbid it happened, but if there was a war and we all got displaced from the US and we all had to relocate to Antarctica, 2 generations later, a lot of children would be speaking and they'd say, "Oh, well, my family's also from California.
Right.
Oh my gosh, what we have that in common." And then I thought about it. I thought, yeah, it's special, but is it? Because Battambang was one of the most populous provinces, if not the second most province to, just the capital, Phnom Penh. And
Hmm.
so that would mean, though, that most folks in the diaspora coming out of that province, the Khmer that our families are speaking in variations might even be closer to northern Cambodian or northern Khmer, in which we're using certain words or variations of words that I can't tell if it's that some words are outdated
Hmm.
or it's because our families left during a certain time era. We're used to speaking a certain way.
Hmm.
And so when we go back and speak and then people are scratching their heads saying, that's funny they use that word.
Right.
That has come up in our circles when we're all kind of figuring things out together. Yeah.
Yeah. It's that like time capsule that
Right.
happens when you,
Exactly. Yes.
yeah, yeah. Which is good in its own way. And
Mhm.
it's, maybe frustrating for certain people in another way.
Right.
Um,
Right.
well, this is amazing. I have so many books I need to pick up and read and learn so much more. This is fascinating. I want to know how this has come into your life. Again, we're not getting too personal. I know that. But, you spoke very lovingly about your polyglot grandmother. We love her.
Right.
And you connected a lot to culture through her. But I'd love to know how the cultures and the mix of cultures, especially where you grew up, like how did this show up in your life around things like food and traditions, especially, and of course with the language?
Absolutely. Well, all my grandparents were a source of culture for me while I
Mm-hmm.
had them in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So all that's left now is my grandmother, the polyglot grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
When I was maybe about a year old or so, I know she and my grandfather divorced. Loved my grandpa. He also spoke 2 dialects and English really well and all these things. But really, from my grandmother, this other kind of door opened with culture because um, she remarried and her husband, my step granddad, his name is Bennett and he's African American. So he's from Louisiana. So growing up in their household was a mix of things. It was not just Chinese culture, but it was also my step granddad's culture
Mm-hmm.
and the foods that he liked, she'd make. So that's how she cooked. So she
Yeah.
made gumbo, she made jambalaya, she made catfish, ribs, all these different things that we grew up eating. My brother and I would spend our weekends with them staying over their house. The kind of things that were around the house that I came in contact with very early on, other than music, were things like Jet Magazine was sitting around on the couch. But we didn't have BET at home, but we had BET there.
Hmm.
So we watched a lot of BET all the time. It was just like day in, day out, the music videos. Even on Sunday, there's no music because there's church. I don't know how
Right.
much, I know a lot of folks listening probably remember this, but they didn't play any hip hop or R&B or anything on Sunday. They only
Yes.
played church.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, yep. It's a very so gospel,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah. I
So you'd
remember.
wake up early and you'd hear all the singing and all that. So in that household, I felt a mix of culture,
Mm.
and I think we spoke about it when you and I first met, but I still crave the food. So I still crave soul food. I don't know out here, it's just not the same as how my grandma was making it. And I'm pretty sure
Mm.
that the recipes she was using were from Louisiana. I'm almost positive because everything I've tasted, even in LA and things like that, going to, different soul food places or Waffle Houses, just not the same. I mean, picked I picked their brains about stuff. How different is it in the South?
Yeah.
I heard about his whole family history, and he'd say things to me like, "We don't say room, we say rum."
Mm.
So
Hmm.
there's little language variations too that
Yeah.
I'd hear about and think is funny, but
Hmm.
then now I keep it close because I'm like, I don't know if people know about those things,
Hmm.
Maybe too because it's from his generation though.
Yeah,
So
that too. Like the
yeah,
generational changes are definitely a part of it as well. With any language, I think.
absolutely.
Um, so this is amazing that you have your connection, your family connection with your grandparents to Cambodia, and now you're connecting with the Black community
Right.
in the US. So, that comes with a whole different linguistic flair as
It
well.
does. It does.
And what was that like? I guess, you don't, looking back, maybe you feel differently about it. And,
Hmm.
probably weren't thinking about it at the time because you're a kid and you
Right.
wanted to play games and watch music videos and stuff.
Right.
Uh, but I know that there's code switching that happens now. I know about it in the African American community. I'm sure it also exists in the Asian American community.
Right.
And now here you are navigating both of those. What has that been like for you? What was that? Or even reflecting back, what were those moments like?
That's a great question. It's a very grand question because I have a lot of feelings about my fellow Asian folks living in the US. First off, I want to preface by saying I'm no one to police how people speak
Of
and
course.
what their cultural influences are like. I have no idea what anyone's story is, just like they don't know mine till they hear it, right?
Hmm.
I think my thing with your question though is, and we talked about it before, but it would trip me out when I hear some other Asian folks in the Bay, and then they're big on speaking with certain words, especially that we would probably associate more with AAVE or Black English, right? So,
Hmm.
um, but I'd find it weird if I kind of figured them out and got to know some of these kids, growing up, and I was like, it's to me, it's weird that they don't even have any family members or anyone in their life that are actual Black people. So it kind of weirded me out when they would come so hard with speaking that way.
Hmm.
Now I understand that us and our Asian communities growing up um, here in the Bay Area, we're always our communities are always alongside Black communities. You take Oakland, Richmond,
Yeah.
even in inner city of San Francisco. It makes sense to me when you grew up in a certain neighborhood,
Hmm.
and that's the main cultural influence. It makes sense to then hear folks speak that way as well.
Hmm.
But then I'd come in contact even with like colleagues where they're either Asian or Filipino, and then they're using words like mighty, and I'm like, to me that I associate that more with like the South, where like folks in the South would be like, yeah, you're looking mighty fine today, like that's a normal expression in the South whether you're black or white. It's
Yeah.
more associated with being from the South.
Hmm.
But then when I'd hear them come up with that, I'm like, where did you come up with this? So I kind of, again, it's just questions that go in my mind
Yeah.
because of my own upbringing and my grandma and my step granddad and my contact with that culture in the household
Hmm.
to me was not fake because I'm still at the end of the day Asian. I'm not out there trying to be anything I'm not.
Yeah.
But I did see all the arguments like recently the actress Aquafina, and so they called her out for, what they said she's using a black scent, right? And so I found it really interesting as a
Hmm.
linguist, not as even an Asian person, but more even as a linguist, like reading the comments of people either defending it
Hmm.
or people calling her out.
Right.
And you know what? I really looked at it. I was like, you know what? They're right. Because the first couple big things she did in Hollywood, she spoke a certain way. So here we are thinking, oh, she's an Asian girl. She's from New York. So, okay, there you go. That's who she's probably always been around. But then there were other movies that came out and she wasn't speaking that way. And then we're just like, oh, yeah, they got a point.
Yeah.
Then you see other videos that come out of like actual southern states
Hmm.
and you got these like Asian, very even not even Southeast Asian, but East Asian, like Korean or Chinese liquor store owners, and they speak with a deep Southern twang. But then my thing is, but they're not using what those articles are referring to as black sin.
Hmm.
They are born and raised in the South. That's all
Hmm.
they know. That's
Yeah.
the only English they know. To
Hmm.
them, that's authentic.
Right.
I kind of, again, would put it back on folks and kind of just say at the end of the day, like, can we keep it real? Like, just keep it real.
Yeah.
Like, if you did grow up that way and you are used to speaking a certain way, then
Hmm.
that's you, cool, you
Hmm.
know? And then to me, again, as an Asian person who grew up in a multiracial household, especially around my grandma and in her household,
Hmm.
to me, I find that as it's fake, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's an act, you know?
I agree with you. It's
Yeah.
whack because like I know you saw me roll my eyes at Aquafina
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and I saw somebody post on social a couple days ago. It was like, if is there any one actor or actress that if they're in the movie, it's an automatic no? And I
Right.
was like, Aquafina,
Yeah.
she's on the no-no list for me.
I would also say though there is a blending of cultures though in some of these I guess neighborhoods, but also just regions in which our cultures are both in contact because
Yeah.
a lot of black folks do express it's not just a fad, so it goes both ways, right? Where
Hmm.
where there's some Asian influences that happen in the black community, just like there are a lot of black influences in the Asian community.
Hmm.
And then I feel for the families, like especially out here in Oakland, we got a lot of families that are, like one partner is black and the other partner is Cambodian.
Hmm.
So to me, it's not inauthentic at all because
Yeah.
those biracial relationships are very real. And
Hmm.
then it's actually a very common thing in the
Yeah.
Cambodian community, Cambodian American community,
Mm.
not just in Oakland, but in other places as well. So we're kind of used to seeing it, and it's not such a shocker. But
Yeah.
I think that like you and I keep talking about, the theme is keeping it real. People may see that with me with say Polynesian or Tahitian stuff,
Hmm.
but I always remind, even down to my kids, I'm like, I am not Polynesian, not Pacific Islander, not Tahitian. I was like, that's your mom.
Yeah.
And I don't even like when folks use that. There's this term Tahitian at heart, right? Where, folks who are into like the Tahitian dancing or they love to visit Tahiti. Well, I'm not Tahitian, but I'm Tahitian at heart. I've heard Tahitians cringe, not just my wife, but Tahitian people cringe at that expression.
Hmm.
So I don't like even that expression now. I'm like, I won't even use that
Yeah.
because, you could, how about you love it in your heart, but you don't have to say you're that label at heart because then
Hmm.
that's also implying that you'd like to use that label, even though
Mm.
you're saying, but it's at heart. But yeah, but you're still trying to say that in some way you're Tahitian. Like, nah,
Yeah.
we learn so much about each other's cultures, but
Hmm.
we also don't try to be each other's culture, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, absolutely. I very strongly believe that culture is meant to be shared and
Right.
appreciated.
Yes.
And there are ways to do that respectfully. And you got to talk to people, you got
Right.
to hear what people what feel comfortable with, and they'll tell you when you're crossing the line, or they'll tell you when, hopefully they'll tell you when you're crossing the line, and how to engage
Right.
respectfully. And I think that's very important. I love that you have such a multicultural life, and your home life is so multicultural as well. As you mentioned, your wife is Tahitian, and your children speak Tahitian and they speak French, and that's so cool. Is there anything that you are experiencing as a father, as a husband in a multilingual household, a multicultural household, that is different or has made you reflect differently on the kind of cultural inheritance that you received as a child?
Absolutely. I appreciate that question so much because there's a lot of reflection for myself, even before I talk to you about this podcast episode.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of a lot of reflection, self-reflection on that, and really humbling myself to know my place in the family as, yes, awesome. I married a Tahitian girl and accepted into her family, but I still try to, and they're not the ones asserting like you are not one of us, so you are here and
Mm-hmm.
we're here.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that. It's that me as a person who wants to humble themselves and understand my placement,
Mm-hmm.
I now understand that every year I'm married into her family, that I actually know less and less. Now that sounds funny to say, because in reality I know more and more,
Right.
but it really affirms like how American I really actually am,
Mm-hmm.
how Asian I actually am, because whenever things come up with anything big, birth practices, babies, raising kids, people passing away, big cultural events,
Mm-hmm.
really puts me in perspective of, oh, you're not, even though you're married into it, you're not one of them. So this is where you sit, or this is where you stand, or this is where you are regarding this situation.
Mm-hmm.
So a good example is, and this is going to sound wild, but a good example is I didn't name my own children. In Tahitian families, traditionally, now this is not everybody, right? This is my in-laws,
Mm-hmm.
but traditionally the grandparents name the children, not the parents.
Okay.
So even my brother-in-laws, they have children. Vadea's older brothers, they did not choose their kids' names.
Mm-hmm.
Out of six kids born to two of her older brothers with their wives, out of the six kids, only one of them had a name chosen by his own mother.
Hmm.
The other five all got named by my mother-in-law and my father-in-law.
Okay.
So when she was first pregnant, I had all these names like, I like this one, I like that. And she was like, yeah, no, we're not naming our kid that. My parents are going to name our kid. And I thought that was wild. Like as an American, you're just like, what do you mean? Like this is my child.
Yeah.
Like what are you talking about? I give names
Right.
everything. I name my
Right.
phone, I name my car. This is like normal for me. Um, but then I realized that in traditional Tahitian families,
Mm-hmm.
they recycle names, meaning they would give you a name of an ancestor that passed away already.
Okay.
And this is for multiple reasons, but the main one I can share is that the name is Fa'ateni, or like praised, and for it's forever remembered.
Right.
So our older son is named after my father-in-law, Tane. There's a variation on it. My father-in-law is Tane Naine, and then my son is Tane Rai.
Mm.
My younger son, super powerful name, because he's named after his great great grandpa, the first Te Ura Tanaroa. And my son is also Te Ura Tangaroa. So there's a lot of power in that.
Yeah.
It's not a practice that I think a lot of people know about,
Mm-hmm.
but I'll have people in the US that even I'm friends with, and they're like, we're having a baby and we love Tahitian culture. Can you guys share a good name for us?
Mm-hmm.
And I will have to respectfully tell them like, you're gonna have to look somewhere else because I have no authority to give you a Tahitian name,
Yeah. Yeah.
and neither does my wife, because the way it works for them is they use genealogy.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an example of like knowing my place. Like now I know if I have a third kid, I'm not even gonna bother. I'm not even gonna bother saying anything because I know already that it's not gonna be me. It's gonna be my mother-in-law or my father-in-law to tell Vaidea what is the name of our first kid.
I
Now,
see.
middle name, go for it. American name, go for it. I
Mhm.
was able to help with those. I was able to have say it those. Last name, they got my last name, so I'm not like that, I'm not tripping that bad, but um but for the, just hearing it as an American, you're just like, what?
Yeah.
How could that be possible? But
Hmm.
then, but these are comforts that you sacrifice, or these are things that you are willing to give up if you really love the culture of your
Yeah.
spouse.
Yeah.
So my wife has done that too. Like when it comes to altars, she knows all about it now, but I have all my Chinese and Cambodian ancestor altar all placed a certain way. And so we know with each other, learn each other's cultures, don't necessarily mess with them.
Hmm.
But I'm learning, and I'm apologizing to her every year for things that I didn't understand, or for times that I look back and I go, geez, I was kind of pushy about that. And I
Yeah.
was really passionate about that and I didn't need to be. And
Hmm.
I apologize. And she's hella sassy. So she's like, yeah, you were wrong. So I'm like, okay, I'll take it, I'll take it.
I love listening to your story because I think so often we hear things about, an American life or an American standard or what it means to be American or
Hmm.
whatever similar to that. And I think your story sounds so American because it's like that's what America is. It's
Right.
culture, learning from one another and being in one another's neighborhoods and you know whether it's a marriage or a friendship or a colleague or you know a neighbor even
Right.
you're always with other people and not other in that way, but you're always with different people and you have so many opportunities to learn from different people and give and receive and take and step back at various different points. So um I I love hearing your story and I love hearing how American it is and I love
Thank
hearing
you.
how beautiful it is and how you and your family have been able to create your American story.
Oh, thank you.
It's so beautiful.
Thank you so much. No, I appreciate that. I really do. It's not every day I get to share it, but I have the most utmost respect and love for my wife's Tahitian culture. It feels good to share because I feel that we have our own podcast too. It's called Tereva Neyao,
Mhm.
and it documents Tahitian and American couples and their stories.
I
So a
love
lot of
that.
people have come on and talked about what their process was like coming here with visa, or if it was their parents.
Mm.
And so, but with that, so there's a chance that there's times where I share, but I just want to say that on here is that I think it's important when you do fall in love with somebody that you also take time to, you don't have to love everything about them, right? But you should take time to learn their upbringing. That could be anything linguistically, culturally, traditions, practices, because that's what made them whoever they are. And
Yeah.
we may not always accept who their parents are, their family. It's totally possible to reject things, but I think that at
Mhm.
least knowing the culture, knowing the people, that's my encouragement to other folks in multiracial relationships is get to know your in-laws, and then get to know the culture, even have your own journey getting to know it, you know?
Yeah, and
That's really
celebrate the journey because it's not
yeah,
about
yes.
there's no end point. You're always
There's
going to be
not.
learning and
Yep,
new things are always going to arrive. So
that's right.
stay open to that too
That's right.
because
That's right.
that journey needs to be honored
That's a good
as well.
point.
I'd love to talk about the content that you're creating online and the community that you're building in real life, Cambodian community, and what kind of conversations and connections have come out of that work and how has it been meaningful for you in the big moments, in the small everyday moments and things like that.
There are so many amazing Cambodian content creators all throughout the US that I've been able to connect with on Instagram. A ton of just Southeast Asian content creators in general.
Mhm.
And beyond the content creators, there's the everyday folks that are DMing me and I've built friendships with. But there a couple of them come to mind. One of them is my friend. I call him Hia, which is it's a Chu Chao Chinese term for older brother.
Mm.
So a lot of Cambodians are also Chu Chao or Tu Chu, and so we'll use the honorifics from Chinese, but we use other Khmer. So, but I call him Hia. His name's Soltera. He runs Khmer Instagram, Khmer Renaissance, and there's another one. It's older sister. I call her Jia. Her name's Sophia. She runs a page called Beyond the Mekong.
Mhm.
And then there's a third one, which is I call her Mui, which is younger sister. So she's also named Sophia, but she has a podcast called Diaspora. So the three of us, we speak every month. We will message each other in a little group chat. And really, when I come to you on this podcast, I know that you labeled it as Khmer, but really, I'm coming more to represent like that Chinese Cambodian community, which we call Gaki Nang, which it's a term that means our own people,
Mhm.
but it's really a term of endearment, of kind of encapsulating this Chu or Chu Chao diaspora,
Mhm.
and especially the ones that went into Cambodia. So now we have this like triforce of identity, which is like
Yeah.
Chinese, Cambodian, and American, right?
Mhm.
But there's so many like authors I met and people that encouraged me. There's a lot of amazing talented people. I can't name them all right now, but it's been awesome to connect, and I'm connecting with folks in Lowell, Massachusetts, all the way down to Dallas, Texas, to folks in Florida. It's crazy. So I love it, and I plan to keep writing, and I plan to keep going because a lot of folks have written to me, and I have a small, humble following. I mean, I'm not like in the 10,000s. I'm only at like 3,000 followers, so I don't do it for the followers. I don't do it for, do it for the gram. I don't do it for the popularity. I'd
Uh-huh.
rather connect with a small couple hundred people that really feel like this is something they needed,
Yeah.
which is written information about the Cambodian culture in English, easy to understand. I bring in my background coming from academia, in which it's sourced and spoken of in a certain way,
Mhm.
but it's also broken down in layman's terms where people can actually read it and understand it.
That's amazing. I
Thank you.
really think that's amazing. And like you said, your community has got to stick together because in the larger like Asian diaspora that we
Right,
have in the US, it's easy to get lost, I think, or
right,
it's easy to get turned around or not know where to go for information. One thing that I always say is that when it comes to Black people, Asian people, Latino people in this country, there's never going to be enough of us speaking up and
right,
saying what we have to say
right.
and supporting our cultures, our people, our history, being visible. There's never going to be enough of us doing that. And I was thinking earlier this morning, like, how many damn documentaries about the Titanic do we have?
Yeah,
And that was
yeah,
one
yes.
historical event, you
Yep.
know.
Hmm.
How many World War II documentaries do we have?
Right,
Civil War documentaries. So,
right,
you know, you gotta show up and I mean you are showing up, but I'm just talking at large in general for
right.
everybody. The more we all share our stories and we connect with one another and we uplift one another, like keep doing it. Like there's never going to be enough people doing that work.
Yeah, I just, if I can, encourage folks, whatever you bring to the table, bring it because your lens is not the same. So if I'm
Mhm.
writing and you're also writing, it's like, but I'm coming from a place where I work in education. I'm also in this biracial marriage. I'm also, coming in with this mix of cultures myself. So
Mhm.
I feel like whatever I'm writing about, the lens is different than the other person.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
sometimes people will say to me, like, yeah, I also want to do this, but I feel like there's hella of us that do the same thing. And I'm like, no, because the way you put it out is completely different than the other person.
Yeah.
And it's like what you just said about the documentaries. A similar idea comes to mind is even in our own community, it's like, well, how many Khmer Rouge or like how many Cambodian genocide documentaries and films do we need? When are we going to hear about the dance masters that are passing away?
Mm,
When are we going to hear about the traditional tattoo? When are we going to learn about the way infrastructure was rebuilt after the war and what people are doing in the economy and all these different things? Like it goes on and on and on.
mhm.
And so my thing is, yes, we need the documentaries about the genocide and the Khmer Rouge time period because that's a huge thing that happened. We can't
Mhm.
let the world forget, but we must not allow that to be this shadow that we live under.
Absolutely.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
it's really important that we celebrate the beauty of our culture
Hmm.
and the different facets of it. And so whenever I see other folks, there's a content creator named Sokai Yoon. He makes like these awesome photographs and videos, and I'm always like applauding these other content creators that just go above and beyond with their creativity, because that's just stuff that didn't exist 10, 20 years ago.
Right.
But now you see somebody doing it and all the work is Cambodian. Man,
Mhm.
I love it. I love it.
I would love for you to let our audience know where we can find you on social media.
I only have one Instagram, which is all things Cambodian. It is exactly those three words put together, all things Cambodian.
Mhm.
And on there, I share a lot of written posts in English to share information or research I gathered and basically share with others. It's 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 for everybody, but specifically, I have second gen and multiracial folks in mind when I'm posting on this IG because those folks are often left out. But other than that, I have books available online on a Square site. So they can be purchased. The I Got Gen Southern Chinese Diaspora in Cambodia is my first publication. It's an ethnography of Chinese Cambodians. You can buy it on Amazon, but you can also get it on my Square site as a ebook, which I think is better because it has live links and things like that in there.
Mhm.
And then there's a collection of poetry. I'll be there too. It's also found on Square site, physical copies, but there's an ebook version as well. And so every time, I have a full-time job, so I work at the college, and that's how I pay the bills. So anything else I am sharing online is really just whatever money I make from the books, I put it back into the temple. I've donated so many times now to the temple where it's like an envelope of money that was all the money I made from the books.
Amazing.
So, it's not a humble brag. It is what it is. Like
Yeah.
I'm literally telling y'all what I've been doing with those profits.
Mhm.
They've been going back to the monks. They've been going back to the construction of different temples,
Mhm.
in both San Francisco, San Jose, and Stockton as well. So that's how you guys could find me. Yeah, I don't have any OnlyFans. I don't have any crazy other sites out there. So if you get catfish, no, I'm just playing. No, but I feel like it's important, right? Because you have all these content creators now on IG being like the real El Charisse, right? Like,
Yeah,
and it's like,
yeah.
is there a fake one? And then I'm
Yeah.
like, sometimes you look people up, you're like, damn, there's fake ones, you
I
know?
know. I
So
know. Hasn't
that's a
happened to me yet, and I hope it never will.
yeah.
I will add links to your social. I will add links to your books in the show notes for this episode so that people who are listening can click and they can support your work right
Thank you.
away.
Thank you. Akuncharan. Thank you.
I've had so much fun chatting with you. And I didn't even ask you about food. OMG. Okay. I just want to do this really quickly. You're in the Bay Area. So,
Right.
where are we getting Cambodian food and what are we eating?
Absolutely. So San Jose has a ton of Cambodian restaurants now, maybe three or four. That for us is a ton because it used to be one in each city. So sadly, San Francisco no longer has Cambodian restaurants,
Mm,
but Oakland and San Jose still do.
okay.
Oakland has Battambang, they have Phnom Penh, they have different ones over there.
I was going to ask you if you have a favorite Cambodian dish or one that you feel like you return to, or maybe one that reminds you of growing up or anything like that.
The person that taught me how to make Cambodian dash Thai food was actually my mom. She grew up cooking. She likes Japanese curry, but she did show me like there's a Southeast Asian twist to the curry she'll make, which she always throws coconut milk in. So there's that. But she taught me how to make papaya salad, and that's my wife's favorite to this day. And then there's the last one, which is a huge topic in our culture, was katiu. So katiu on the surface looks like pho,
Mm,
but it's not pho because
mhm,
it's pork bone based.
mm,
And it is a dish that came from the Teochew or Chinese diaspora.
mhm.
In our language, we call it Gui Tiao. Gui Tiao is the real Chinese name. When it got brought to Thailand and Cambodia and Vietnam, it was renamed, according to the local languages. So Thai will say Gui Tiao, and then um, Cambodians will say Katiu, and then Vietnamese will say Hu Tieu. So if
Mm.
you go, so there's a big argument in our community right now because people are trying to claim that pho is the Vietnamese word and Kutiu is the Cambodian or the Khmer word.
Mm.
But us who are Teochew Chinese, we are firing back and saying those are two different things. Because
Yeah.
if you go to a Vietnamese restaurant, they have a whole section for pho, and then they have a whole section for Hue Tieu.
Oh,
That's how
okay.
different they are.
Yeah.
They look similar, but the way we eat it is that actually, okay, so you've had pho before?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so if you can imagine all the ingredients, similar ingredients, right? The
Mm.
all the fixins, all the different stuff on the noodle, but not the soup.
Yeah.
And the way we do it is we put the soup on the side. They call this dry katiu. So you drink the soup on the side and you have the noodles and all the fixins all
Hmm.
together, the meat, the shrimp, everything, the fish balls, all that.
Hmm.
So it's an interesting way of eating it, but you could also eat katiu like this is why people think it's fuzz because most people will eat it with the soup in, so it's just all mixed in together.
Yeah.
Then it looks and seems like pho, but it's not pho.
Interesting.
So people, there's a it's a big Cambodian American argument online. It's like all these different times, but most people know the difference, right?
Hmm.
And you can't blame those in the diaspora that don't because like I told you earlier, if there was a war and we all got sent from the US to Antarctica and our kids were calling sandwiches burgers, we would be like, no, 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 that's a sandwich. A
Mm.
burger's something else.
Hmm.
Same concept,
Yeah.
but that's not a burger. That's a sandwich, kid. And then they'd be like, well, my mom said this is a burger, so shut the hell up. That kind of thing. Excuse my language. But that's how it feels right now, where people are like, pho and Kati were the same thing. They're just different languages in the way it's like, nope.
Mm.
Vietnamese people call pho and they call Kati, they call it Hu Tiu.
Mm.
So then we should not be calling it, it's not Cambodian pho. So people, I've been one of the vocal people who's been saying it's not the same. But again, we can't call sandwiches burgers.
Right, right,
They're
right.
different. Same concept, but different.
Yeah, like a hot dog. Is that a
There you go.
sandwich?
Nope. But you could see that in two generations,
Right.
if there's not a lot of direction being given
Hmm.
and it just gets placed on the table and you're eating, this is yummy. What is this? Katiu. And then everyone shuts up, just keeps eating. Your whole life you grow up thinking, this is what I know it is.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of thing, you
Yeah.
know?
This has been amazing,
Thank
Ryan.
you.
This has really
I
been
agree.
such a wonderful conversation. I like to end each episode on the same question. So, that question, just to have a little bit of fun, do you have any jokes, popular sayings, tongue twisters, cool slang words, idioms, words of wisdom, or words of advice in Khmer to share and to teach us?
So, not in Khmer, but I wanted to share it because, and again, preface, I'm not the expert. I hope people listening don't come for me with the torches and say you told it back wrong, but this is how it was told to me.
Okay.
So, it's not a joke, but I did find it humorous in Cambodia and I wanted to share it because it really shows how ethnically diverse Cambodia is as a country.
Hmm.
So, I was in Battambang province, which is the province I had mentioned earlier in the episode.
Yes.
I can't remember which small town we were in, but the locals joked with us that we were standing in what they called a market that is full of different people, but the vendors only sell to themselves. So that's how they said it in Khmer. But to me, this is what I understood it. And so I was like, what do you mean? And so they said what they meant was they pointed to a Cham Muslim woman and she was selling shrimp. And next to her was another stand or shop It was owned by a Chinese family who specialized in roasted pork and beef noodles. And last was a whole row of Khmer families selling freshly caught mudfish or catfish, right? And so my grandmother's driver explained it's mostly the cham who like that particular shrimp. So they use it to make shrimp cakes and dried shrimp added to other dishes. So they hurry to buy it up.
Yeah.
Then for the Chinese places, since the chams don't eat pork because they're Muslim, and a lot of Khmer people don't eat beef because they worship certain principles that, you cannot eat beef.
Right, right.
So only Chinese people eat at the Chinese restaurant.
Interesting.
And then last is the Khmer fishermen. The type of fish they catch are good for making dried fish. So they usually sell out quick to all the Khmer families who want to hurry and buy it for, they make that during the rainy season because you can't always find your food. So there you have it, a market full of different people who only sell to their own kind.
Aha. That's an interesting place.
Yes.
I appreciate learning from you, and I appreciate having you here for this time to have this conversation with me, with our audience. Really quickly, before I let you go, I don't want to necessarily put us in Cambodia, but if you feel that's appropriate, go for it. My question is, after you've been speaking to somebody for some time, but now it's time to go your separate ways, in Khmer, what would be the best way to say goodbye?
We have two ways. Just like how I started the episode, I had said to you the two greetings, which is Susaday, which is the informal way to say hello, and Jambrip Sua, which is the formal way to say hello. You have two ways in Khmer. You have Sun Li Hai or Li Hai, which is it's like saying bye now. So informal, and then you have Jambrip Lia. So Jambrip Lia is the way you could say goodbye formally. And so to the to close it out, I'd say Jambrip Lia. Thank you.
To you, I would say Sun Li Hai. Ryan?
Thank you.
Sun Li Hai.
We'll see each other soon.
We'll see each other soon. Thank you so much again.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you.
New episodes of Speaking Tongues are available every Monday, 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and to like and share episodes with other language lovers like yourselves.